Hi everyone, this is Lucas Hansen. I'm standing here in SFO1, beautiful space, and it's probably the smartest space we have here in Cisco, where we've connected a bunch of Cisco devices, infrastructure, IoT sensors. We've mapped this with AI maps, and then we pulled in all this data to show different outcomes, which we'll walk through these demos. So this is our kiosk. I think everyone is probably aware of this. We have it deployed hundreds of sites worldwide. And I'm going to start with talking about AI maps. So our AI maps are essentially where we're taking CAD files and we're running them through an AI black box. And out the other side, we're able to understand and build hierarchies around tables, desks, walls, different types of points of interest like restrooms, cafeterias. So we're getting all this information into spaces, and we can do a lot of cool stuff with it. One of the most basics and one I think the most coolest things are for a bunch of different use cases is associating different types of IoT telemetry through our Sensor Connect framework with these objects. So I'm just going to click into Anchor Steam real quickly where we can see that somebody actually just walked out. We're pulling in occupancy data from these collaboration devices. We're pulling in air quality, temperature, humidity from collaboration devices. So all this is coming in the spaces. And in this example, we're just representing it through this employee kind of like application that people are using, but we also have it in apps as well. The other pieces here to touch on real quickly is we talked about collaboration devices for occupancy. We have some third-party devices that do that. But we're also pulling in floor occupancy and building occupancy from our wireless sensors. So the Wi-Fi 7 access points, they're an amazing sensor to actually understand how many people are in spaces and how many devices are in spaces to give real estate facility teams a sense of that. So there are a few new features here, which I'll just briefly touch on that you may have not been aware of. So we've definitely done a lot of work on the performance of the board and of the experience, which hopefully you all can see that through the previous iterations. We've also added different labels around different features we're bringing up. So we'll go into smart rooms. It's actually super cool. So we've also added search in here, and we continue to improve that. You can find it a couple ways. We can look at Room Finder. In here, we can look at different things to search on, attributes for the room, capacity, availability. We can look here. But we can also click down here on search and enter the room name. So we want to go to Anchor Steam. That's where my next meeting is. It's also a smart room. So I'm going to go ahead and type in Anchor Steam. And what that's going to do is it's going to bring it up here front and center. It's going to tell me all that information about the room. Again, booking, the occupancy sensor that's tied to it with the numbers, all the information about the air quality. And I'm going to go ahead and get directions. So one thing we're making available with folks that have signage is essentially this static path. And the static path is telling you where you are in relation to the room. So here it's Anchor Steam, and it gives me some context because this is actually where the board is. So I know I got to turn around, go to my left, and go that way. So we talked about the static path that goes from spot to where I want to go, in this case, Anchor Steam. And I'm going to a meeting, and I want to pick a smart room. What's a smart room? We'll talk about it. But how am I going to get there? So what we've done that's really exciting is we pulled together the elements of the Spaces OS to enable us to kind of like rapidly bolt on and deliver different outcomes. Smart rooms is one of them, but also a super exciting one is indoor navigation. So if you put all that together, we can actually deploy indoor navigation really quickly. We've had many customer examples where they've had the Spaces OS deployed, and we've been able to deploy navigation in about some cases like 12 hours, in many cases 24 hours. So we do it really quickly. For our customers, this should be exciting because they're taking this investment in Spaces and Cisco and they're leveraging it for different outcomes. Navigation here is super inexpensive. It's much less expensive than competitors and substitutes. You deploy it a lot more quickly, and it's running on top of infrastructure that's already in the ceilings, i.e. you don't have to put up other gateways, and typically you don't have to put up very many beacons as well if they have the right density, which most of our customers do. So the last thing here with indoor navigation, when we talked about the Spaces OS, is our app clip. And I think this is a big differentiator in terms of the employee experience because nobody has to download an app. What we do is we click on where we want to go. What pulls up is this path along with the QR code. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and scan that. So as you can see, it's going to take me to download what we call an app clip. So I'm not downloading an app. It's pulling down a little piece of code from the cloud that's gone through all the security from Cisco and Apple. It's getting the map, and then it's getting to the APIs on the phone to start getting my location on the earth. Now this is using, again, the map that we downloaded originally, same map here, and access points that are in the ceiling already. And we can do this very quickly. So now I'm going to say, take me to Anchorstein. It gives me the path. I'm going to go ahead and walk over to Anchorstein to the smart room. And so as I do this, the location is being calculated on the phone using access points in the BLE radio that's in the ceiling. And all this is happening in real time as I'm coming over to Anchorstein. And so as I get here, it's going to say I've arrived, and now I'll step inside. So one of the states we have for the smart rooms is by optimizing the space for productivity. We'll show you how it looks when it's preconditioning, but in this case, we've walked into the room. It's more of an ad hoc meeting, and we're able to start conditioning that room based on occupancy. So what's happening here is that this camera, like we all know, is counting the people in the space. Now all that count happens on the device, okay? The number of people comes up to the Spaces cloud, which we use for a bunch of different outcomes. And from there, we're sending it through the Cisco Building Gateway, the Spaces Building Gateway, to the BMS, so that that BMS or building management system can essentially inform the HVAC on how to operate. So what it's doing is it's going to increase airflow into the room, and this has a ton of scientific evidence about it. We can get you the papers. But basically, removing and reducing CO2 is directly linked to employee productivity. Also, like getting more air into the room, keeping it cooler is just better kind of employee experience all around. And so this is essentially what we're doing in terms of the smart room, leveraging these collab sensors and our Spaces Building Gateway. What we also have in Spaces is connectivity and information, is the information about the calendaring. So we know when meetings are happening. And in this case, we can actually start optimizing this space for the meeting that's going to happen, as you can see here. So that when people come into the room, they're actually going to be in a space that's been preconditioned for the meeting. So the final mode I want to talk about is our energy savings mode. And this one is, it resonates quite often with like customers globally, again, because it just enables them to use, again, collaboration devices like sensors they own to be more efficient with the BMS and the HVACs. So in this case, you can see like we put a piece of paper over here so we can kind of show you this. And what we're able to do is in the zones and in the rooms, they have these something called set points. And effectively what it means is like the temperature needs to be maintained between like a lower bound and an upper bound. So since we know the occupancy, since we know when meetings are happening, that enables us to be intelligent to precondition the rooms or to condition them on demand. Given that information, you know, most customers are very comfortable with decreasing that lower boundary and increasing the upper boundary so the HVAC doesn't have to work as hard to be in between there. Also, in many cases, we've seen where customers just keep it at a consistent temperature the whole time. It's not intelligent at all. And so we are able to at least remove that kind of like constant, saying it always has to be at this temperature, and we can, you know, create these set points and keep it within a certain range since we have the intelligence. So now that we saw what a smart room is, let's talk about a little bit how it works. So what I have right here is our Spaces Building Gateway. This is what is helping connect the data from the cloud that comes from the collaboration device to the HVAC and the BMS. So how it all works is that occupancy sensor that's in the room, in this case a collaboration device, is counting the number of people. It sends that data up to the cloud, and then the cloud is connected to the internet, via the internet to the building gateway. where it receives this and essentially sends it over to the BMS. And then, so you see one connection here, that's to the cloud, and the other one over to the BMS via the Jace. So we're back in the meeting room, and we looked at collaboration devices as a sensor, and they are the best occupancy sensor, I think, out there on the market. But in some cases, you may not have collaboration devices. So we're going to give you a couple examples, and there's many more that work with the Spaces OS and the sensor framework. So one of these is a portal beam, and what it does is a thermal camera that takes a picture of the space, sometimes every minute, sometimes every 10, 20, 30 seconds, and it shows heat blobs. Now, how this works with the framework and the OS is that two pieces. This sensor is connected to that room in the AI map, right? So kind of if you think about the map, we have all these different rooms. Right now we're in Atwater Tavern, and in that we have this concept of a collaboration device, or sorry, a concept of a portal beam that has occupancy. So when we report that out, whether it's to our signage or through any of the other apps, we'll see occupancy that comes from this portal beam into our app. Now this transmits information over BLE to our access points. The benefit there being we don't have to install any gateways, any third-party gateways in the ceiling to talk to this. So from a customer perspective, we're taking care of, Cisco's taking care of the mapping and the objects, as well as the gateway, which makes this a very kind of low-cost activity and that works within this larger framework from Spaces with the Cisco infrastructure for occupancy. Right now, I'm not in the office. I'm enjoying just a beautiful day outside next to the Bay Bridge. It is a gorgeous day, and I want to get a desk. So what we have is a web app that's showing smart desking, and it allows us to actually book a desk. So this is where my team sits, and I can see that quite a few of my team members have actually booked a desk already. I'm going to go ahead and get this one. So I'm going to book this desk. So here we have it here on my laptop, but I'm also able to have this on the go on my phone as well. And as you can see, I could cancel my booking. So let's say, hey, I don't want to actually use this spot. I'm going to go ahead and cancel that. Now it's available to everybody again. I'm going to go ahead and get this one because I actually like that view better. So now I'm booking this again. So where we're at here is we're essentially giving that same map again, showing desks, allowing or enabling our customers to book the different capabilities or the different desks here. We'll have this available with 9800 phones from Collab very soon. We'll be able to show the status of the booking, and then over time we'll bring in occupancy sensors as well to provide the real-time status of the desk. So we saw some of the outcomes that the employees can experience. We talked a lot about the Spaces OS and how they're powering these outcomes. But let's take a look at what folks in the back office, so some of the real estate professionals, facility management professionals, can use the data that's available to them that's coming in through the Spaces OS and through all this great Cisco infrastructure. So I'm just going to show you a few things here. The first one is an application we have called Space Manager. This is where we do a lot of the management for maps and for our sensor telemetry, like putting these things, associating them with one another, building out that framework. But here's an example of wireless occupancy as a heat map, using the same map that we talked about the AI maps. It's rendered a little bit differently, and we can essentially see occupancy over the last few hours here based on wireless activity. So this is something that gives people a real visual understanding of how the space is being used, and it's near real time. On the same map, we can take a look at temperature, humidity, all these other elements that are in real time to understand how they're being used, or how the space is being used, and what the conditions are. In this same app, we have some reporting where you can actually export room occupancy as a CSV. We can also export this through other various ways whether it's like via API or other kind of like export mechanisms. The second thing I want to talk a little bit about is our environmental metrics application. This is bringing in a bunch of sensor telemetry, and again, this is all for the Meraki building around air quality, ambient noise, humidity, temperature. So if I click in the air quality and click on CO2, we're actually going to pull in CO2 information from our Meraki Things sensors that's on the second floor. And this, you can see it makes sense where you see basically during the work day, we see CO2 levels rise in different rooms, not necessarily the smart rooms actually, and you can kind of track that and see what the maxes and the mins are over time. And so we have this for different air quality metrics like TVOC, PM2.5, as well as humidity, temperature, and other pieces. So the last thing I want to show quickly is our space utilization app, which actually provides both wireless occupancy information as well as collaboration device occupancy information for conference rooms. And we show this for kind of a portfolio view of different campuses and buildings, but also at the campus and building view. So if we look on here and we can drill into San Francisco SFO1, we can see utilization for the building over different days for the month of February here. Gives us a count of people over these different time frames, which is correlated to the devices that are associated. And then we can come down to different meeting rooms and see what the most utilized meeting rooms are, and get that for all of the different conference rooms where collaboration devices are. We also get kind of maximum count of the peak occupants of people in different meeting rooms, as well as average occupancy. And other interesting information, like for instance, in the San Francisco building, generally almost 50% of the time that the conference room is occupied, it's just one person. So these types of insights are very, very powerful. We also look at occupancy by capacity. We also can look at different occupancy by booking status, whether like there's ghosted meetings, idle rooms, ad hoc meetings, and reserved. So a lot of good information that we're pulling in here, and we can do it at the campus, the building, and the floor level, and we're leveraging both the wireless data from these access points as well as room data from the collaboration devices. So thanks for joining us for the product innovations. I hope you understand or have a better understanding of how the Spaces OS brings together, the AI mapping, our sensor framework, our location, all together to deliver these different experiences. So we looked at indoor navigation, we looked at pathfinding, we looked at smart rooms. We got to go behind the scenes and see how some of this is deployed and a lot of the hardware. Took a look at different IoT sensors that we work with. So as you can see that there's a lot that we can do with the Spaces OS, putting all this stuff together to deliver a lot of the outcomes that make employees' lives better, more productive, help you save money, and help the real estate facilities teams understand how the space is being used. So thank you very much, and look forward to deploying Spaces at your locations in the near future.